Well, good Tuesday afternoon. I'm going to try to make this one hopefully a little quicker because I see some darker clouds rising up behind me, and even though I'm under shelter, I still don't want to, especially if it's thunder and lightning, I don't want to be out here. But anyway, sorry I didn't make it this weekend. We spent some much needed time with our grandchildren from Wisconsin on Friday. These are the grandchildren that our son passed away in April. April. I think. Yeah, I believe it was April. But anyway, it's a shame that I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was April. But anyway, we spent some much needed time with them before they went home the next day. So and so I didn't get to do that, and then Saturday I was kind of wiped out. But anyway, just wanted to share with you what the Lord showed me. Anyway, something he showed me even last week, and I've read over this, and you probably have too, quite a few times, but just showed me how faithful the Lord is. And that's my theme for today is God is faithful even when we're not. I fail him every day, and yet he is still faithful. None of my failures catches him by surprise. He is faithful, and he will be faithful until the end. But what I was thinking about when I was studying this out, I was, we have our down days. We have our times where we feel, especially with the way the world is now, you don't get a break. Nobody gets a break, especially in this world. But the thought crossed my mind. I was just thinking about there's situations in my family that right now is a struggle, that is heartbreaking, that is you get frustrated, and then you get when you don't see an end to it. Remember, God sees it all, so he knows who's going to turn to him and who's not. But we are, just like I told you last week, God he's not bound by the same laws that we are. He's not bound by time or matter or space, but we are. We're, because we're human. And so, when we want results, if it takes a long time, we get frustrated, and then we want to give up. But this Bible was written, well, at the time it was written, and I'm mainly talking about the New Testament. He told the disciples that he was coming back. And that's been over 2,000 years ago. And you know what? I wonder if they got discouraged. We keep thinking, Lord, when are you coming back? All the signs. I've heard. I think it was Ralph Sexton that we listen to sometimes. He's a big time prophecy preacher. You can look him up on YouTube. He goes to Israel a lot. But they're saying that all the things in the Bible that God says has to happen before Jesus' return has already happened. I think they've already got the red heifer. I'm not sure. I don't think they have started building the temples. I think that's one of the issues. Maybe they're working on them. I'm not sure on that one. But anyway, my thought is that God is so faithful that whatever he says in his word will come true. But I was just thinking the other day, I kind of got discouraged, and I said, the thought, for just a fleeting moment, the thought crossed my mind is, he's not coming back. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, here she goes to church every Sunday. I rarely ever miss unless there's something major happening. And here I'm doing these videos, but yet I have doubts. How can you doubt? Because I'm human. The thought, just for a fleeting moment, that's what the thought was. And so we know where those thoughts come from. The deceiver is who puts those thoughts in your mind. Remember, the battle is in the mind, because he can't hurt you. As far as I know, he can't hurt you physically, but what he does is discourage you and hurt you mentally. But yeah, that it did cross my mind for just a fleeting moment. And that's why it's important to saturate your mind with God's truth, because the world is we've seen that with this new stuff with Fauci and all the stuff that was COVID. That was all a lie. And I'm not going to get political. Don't worry about that. But we know now it was all a lie. I knew then that it was a lie. Or at least even though I was in the medical field, I did not have confidence in all that. But now I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Anyway, we know that the world and people is going to lie to us, because everybody has their own agenda on why they lie. They make excuses why they lie. So basically, we can't trust anybody or anything in this world, even those people that we love and that we would almost stake our life on. Because we're human, we're going to mess up. And even times where we can't keep our word, then, there's a reason for, even though there may be a good reason for it, but we're still flesh and blood, and we still are going to fail each other. We're still going to disappoint, I can't say we're going to disappoint God, because we're not, because he already knows everything, but we're going to do things and say things, think things that he didn't put there. So anyway, I was just thankful, telling the Lord, I'm just thanking him for his faithfulness. He's faithful to me, even when I'm not faithful to him, even when I fail. But you know what? He knows all that. He knows, remember, he knows the end from the beginning. So, just a second. Excuse me. But anyway, so let's get on to reading, and hopefully I won't last too long for you. But going back to Genesis, let's see, chapter, I believe it is 15. Yeah, chapter 15, starting at verse 7. And I didn't take notes this time on these, so bear with me if I get off track. This, in my Bible, the heading on this one starts at verse 7. It says, Prophecy of Israel's Bondage. And this is the Lord talking to Abraham. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of the Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said to him, Take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them all in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land from the river of Egypt until the great river, the river Euphrates. But anyway, I want to read you the footnotes in this, and there's actually 2 things in this passage that I really wanted to focus on. Let's see. 15, 7, it says 15, 7 through 21. Okay, divided him in the midst. It means the cutting where God told Abraham to cut the animals in half. It says it's a covenant. It's a covenant, conveys the idea that the same will be done to the one who breaks this covenant. Ancient covenants were sometimes confirmed by the halving of a sacrificial victims and the two parties to the covenant passing between them. It says the Mari tablets, and then it says it's also in Jeremiah 34, verse 18 and 19. In this case, however, God alone passes between let's see where the animal pieces, and in the form of a smoking furnace from which torch-like flames shoot out. Because this covenant with Abraham is unconditional and can be carried out only by God himself. Thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. This is the prophecy of Israel's sojourn in Egypt, predicted to take place some 300 years later and lasting about 400 years. Then God would judge that nation and bring Israel out with great substance. Anyway, two things. Like it said that normally when you made a covenant with like another person, you would take these animals and that you would divide them in half. And the statement was that if you didn't keep your word and whatever you promised, that the same would be done unto you, whoever broke that covenant. But in this case, and then you would walk between the halved carcasses, and as a promise to that covenant, whatever it was you promised. And but in this case, God put Abraham to sleep, and he was the torch. He was the burning fire that walked through the midst of those carcasses, because his covenant could not be broken, because he was the one that made it with himself, that this was what he was going to do. The other thing is about where it speaks about them going into bondage. So remember, it said in the footnotes, it talked about, also in the verses, it talked about 400 years. So if you switch over to Exodus chapter 12, let me find where it's at. And let's see here. Exodus. Well, 12, starting at verse 40. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. Remember, back in Genesis, he said, 400 years. So it says, and it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all of the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. That is that night of the Lord to be observed by all the children of Israel in their generations. So, let's see. Let's see here. Okay, and starting at verse 43, and the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. Thou shalt no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then thou shalt eat. But anyway, that goes into talking about the Passover. But let's see here. I was going to read where it says, these bugs. Anyway, let me just go down to the footnotes, because it talks about that. The 430 years at the time of the sojourning in Egypt has been interpreted as two basic ways. The first is that the bondage lasted only 215 years. The two main arguments for this view are, and I didn't even realize that there was an argument about the time, because remember in Genesis it said 400 years, and in another place it says 430. Let's see here. Anyway, that is, come on, leave me alone, bugs. That's a little bit, this is a little bit confusing, but anyway, he said 400 years, which is how long they stayed in Egypt. It also said that they would send them out with great substance, and I read that as well in here, that they went out. They did go out with great substance. starting in chapter 12 also of Exodus, it says that the Israelites leave Egypt, and it says the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men, besides the children. So I guess they considered, like, man would be men and women, and then all the children. So if there's 600,000 men, that was quite a few people, maybe 1 million people that come out of that. Wouldn't you like to be have to lead all them? No wonder Moses got frustrated, and he several times he got frustrated with them. But anyway, there's another verse in here where it talks, like I said, I didn't write my notes down this time, but it talks about how they did go out with great substance. And anyway, and that's what the Bible said in Genesis. So, you know, God was faithful long before. So if they were in Egypt 400 years, I'm not sure how much time from the time it was prophesied or promised by God, from that point to when they did go, I'm not sure how much time lapsed there. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter about the time. Sorry, there's a train. Hopefully you can hear me. Anyway, and what it showed me is it doesn't matter how long. Sorry. It doesn't matter how long a time goes by. Oh, come on, train. Satan will do anything to shut you up. Anyway, and it's probably going to blow again here in just a minute because it's about to cross a road. But what the point is, it does not matter how much time has gone by. God keeps his word. He still keeps his word. And there's no power greater than God. So who can stop him? Satan thinks he can. If you read about the you know, after the rapture, and then you've got the 1,000-year reign, and then Satan's let loose again. He's still so arrogant that he thinks he can defeat God. He thinks he can defeat Satan. I mean, he thinks he can defeat Jesus. And there is no power greater than God. And we need to remember that. Hopefully you can hear me. But another thing is... There's a train. It's pretty loud. It's right behind. Sorry. Maybe it'll go on here in just a minute. Okay. But another thing that I was thinking of is that, you know, Jesus... from Genesis to Genesis chapter 3, and I had never thought of it like this, but even in Genesis chapter 3, it's talking about, you know, when Jesus would prophesy the birth of Jesus. It says Genesis 3 starting at verse 14, it said, "And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life." I'm going to mention one thing there, you know, and then I'll go on to what I was going to tell you. So it says, "Upon thy belly shalt thou go." So that sounds like Satan at one time walked on feet. Walked, you know, up on his feet. So because he had to have, because upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So it sounds like at one time he was on his feet. But anyway, the next verse is the one I was talking about. "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." So I've heard preachers talk about that verse right there, in that, well, if you get a head wound most of the time, if it's bad enough, it's deadly. How often is a heel wound deadly? Not very often. But they said, and I've heard it preached where it says, "Thou shalt bruise his heel." It's a wound, but not unto death. Even though physically, and that's speaking to Jesus' death on the cross. Yes, he physically died, but then he was resurrected. He didn't stay dead. So, it says the wages of sin is death. But because he never sinned, he couldn't stay dead. But anyway, where it says, "It shall bruise thy head," that means a crushing head wound, which means when Jesus died on the cross, that sealed Satan's fate. And even though his death would not be, or I guess he doesn't die, but his eternity is secured. His eternity is imminent. That means there's no going back at that point. He will one day be put where he's supposed to be, where he should have been all along. But anyway, but all through the Old Testament, it speaks in different ways about Jesus' birth, about the coming Messiah. In Psalms 22, and you look at some of these verses here, listen to some of these verses. If you go to Psalms 22, and you'll hear, and you compare that to even the four Gospels where it talks about Jesus' crucifixion, starting at verse 1, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring?" We heard that on the cross. Let's see. And down here in verse 7, it says, all they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out their lip, which means they show contempt with their mouth, and shake their head, saying, he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. Remember that verse, it's in the New Testament where it says, he says he's God, or he's trusted in God. Let him call on his God. I believe it was kind of the way it was worded. Let's see here. There was another one. Anyway, let's see here. Verse 16 says, for dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. This is way back in Psalms. Anyway, many years before before Jesus was even born. Verse 14 says, I'm poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, and it is melted in the midst of my bowels. So you think about when they pierced his side, it said blood and water ran out. These bugs, I need to start spraying myself when I come over here. But anyway, that's in verse 22. And then I was reading this morning. I've been reading the past couple of weeks in the book of John. And when it was coming to, let's see, let me look right here. And I was looking at the little, not the footnotes, but the little cross references. And it was talking about something that was in Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 10. Let's see here. I know there was something in chapter 10 that related to the verse in John. But like I said, I did not write my notes, and I do apologize for that. But anyway, in the book of Zechariah, it talks about, it cross references with some of those verses in John, but it just shows you how faithful God is. Years and years before Jesus was ever physically born, because God knew it all. He knew everything. and there is nothing. There's nothing that he doesn't know. So he is faithful in many times when we are not. And I wish I could find that verse, but I remember it was in Zechariah chapter 10. But it was talking about the it was talking about had something to do with the crucifixion. But you know, and there's multiple places in the Bible where they cross-reference, which not just in the 4 Gospels, but you know, in Isaiah chapter 53 talks and even tells about how he was crucified. It says he was starting in verse 53, verse 7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Remember when it said when he was before Pilate, he didn't open his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living, which means he died. For the transgressions of my people was he stricken, sins of the people. And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He had put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Let's see here. He shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Okay, verse 12 says, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. He was numbered with the transgressors. He bare the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. So we are the transgressors. He paid our sin debt. It's where it says he was numbered with transgressors. The two hanging on either side of him on the crosses, he was up there with them. I mean, it's just amazing at how that he, you know, like I said, God knew. He knows everything from the beginning to the end, and the end to the beginning. There's nothing that catches him by surprise, and yet he is so faithful. And he, you know, it makes you wonder. You know, those Pharisees or the what do you call it? The priest and things like that. They knew their Bible probably better than we know our Bible. They knew the Old Testament. Why could they not see it? But then again, why do people of today not see it? Why do even Christians not really? Some Christians don't always see it or don't always obey it. So we can't point fingers back at them, because we are guilty ourselves of not following or not seeing it, not digging into it. But you know, it's just talking about how faithful. You know how faithful God is, how faithful He is. So you know, that's that should and does help me, that when that thought crosses my mind again, that He's not coming back. It's been over 2,000 years. He's not coming back. That's a lie, because He's faithful. He has to keep His word. He has never told one lie. There has never been anything that He said that has not come true up to this point. So it doesn't matter if He comes back in my lifetime. It feels like He is, because I mean the way of the world is it's going crazy. But and it really does seem like it's going to be any day. But if it's not, He's still going to be faithful. And I was reading this morning in John, I think it's towards the end. It's after the resurrection, when He was in the tomb, and I you know, some things I read, it makes me laugh, not as in that I think it's funny, but joyful laugh. where Peter and I believe it was John that went into the tomb after he was resurrected, and what they saw there was the wrappings where he had been, where they buried the burying cloths, and then the one that went over the face was folded. The others were just laid there, but that one was folded. And if you search that out, about a folded napkin, what it means, and I've heard this for many years now, what it means is I'm coming back. If you go to a restaurant where they serve, where it's like a fancy restaurant, let's say, and if you want the waiter to know that you're not finished and you have to get up for whatever reason, you fold your napkin, because that means you're coming back. You're not finished yet. And so, but when I read that this morning, it made me laugh, a joyful laugh. He is coming back. No matter what the enemy tells me, no matter what even my flesh will tell me sometimes, he is coming back. But anyway, I'm sorry that this didn't, it went a little longer than I meant for it to, and I didn't take notes, and I'm sorry for that. But I hope you have a blessed day. I hope you find the Lord is faithful. He is faithful. I hope you figure that out for yourself, or find that out for yourself, because the enemy will definitely use that against you. Trust him when you can't even trust yourself. I love you, and I hope you have a good day.